I'm Vanessa Louise. Welcome to Choose You, Choose Bliss, where we believe in one goal, one purpose, love. Through shared experiences, we aim to enlighten, enrich and enroll you in actively applying the tools and techniques to enable and continue healing for your whole self. Now is the time to take back our power, reconnect with our true selves, each other, including the world around us, and live life with confidence, purpose and joy. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing you. This podcast was recorded before the UK Supreme Court ruling on the 16th of April 2025 regarding the interpretation of women and sex in the Equality Act 2010, updating it to refer to biological sex only. Since then, the media and government have been running with transphobic narratives encouraging hostility for trans people. My guest mentions in this podcast that she feels the UK is a lot safer than it used to be for trans people, but now believes the UK will potentially no longer be a safe country for people like her if it continues along this path. This is her story, and we invite you to listen with an open mind, a loving heart, as she shares her experience, human being to human being. As ever, it's an absolute blessing to be here sharing space with you all. Choose You, Choose Bliss is the podcast where we share some enlightening and encouraging real stories, and today is no different. My guest today has a remarkably brave story that challenges typical societal norms and speaks to the depths of our truth and worth of who we are as individuals. It's my pleasure to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Zoe.
Hi.
Hello, Zoe. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Vanessa. It's really great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. I've been really keen to speak to you. We've probably known each other less than a year, about a year or so, through our businesses. And so I would like to begin with a question, if I may. So what has been your greatest learning in life, or the statement that defines what your life has taught you?
So I think the only way to answer that is to say that the thing that my life has taught me is that I have worth as a human being and that I deserve to be happy. Because for the longest time, I didn't think that. But I do now.
Wow.
So
good. And that in itself, I think, will speak to so many people, because that you have worth as a human being and that you deserve to be happy. I know I resonate with that. Tell us of how you discovered that to be your life's lesson. Start from the beginning for us, if you will.
Okay. So I'm a transgender woman. So what that means is that I was born into a male body. And for the vast majority of my life, I was raised as a boy, and then I lived my life as a man. But that wasn't who I. That wasn't me. It wasn't how I felt comfortable. And I kind of knew that sort of almost from the get-go. As soon as I was old enough to question my gender identity, and children question their gender identities significantly younger than you might think they do. But as soon as I was old enough to do that, I knew that there was something different about me. But society being what it was back then, things are a lot better now. But back then, it was a lot more taboo than it is now.
It's kind of like a herd mentality, isn't it? That we all kind of join in on the bandwagon if we're not truly clear on what we stand for as an individual. I mean, my passion in this world is love. And that's why I love what you said. I have worth as a human being and I deserve to be happy. That really should be everybody's mantra, right? On some level, right? Because that's why we're here. So I know I stand for people feeling comfortable in the skin they're in. That was my old industry in cosmetics. But to feel that they are worthy as a human being, regardless of your gender. The problem is that people then jump on bandwagons and, and each to their own, right? I'm not saying one is good, one is bad. It's neither. It is what it is. But when you are facing that as the majority, or it's not, in inverted commas, the norm as society would call it, then that must be a really tricky place to be, where you're challenged by the status quo.
So the issue that I and basically every other trans person faces, again, not so much now because things have changed, but certainly, I grew up. I was born in 85. I really consider myself a child of the 90s, but back then it was, if not. No, I suppose it was socially acceptable to publicly humiliate and denigrate people like me. And if you want proof of that, just look at what how media portrayed trans people. A classic example of this is Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. You know that movie?
Love that movie.
So in that movie, it culminates in the public forcible outing and humiliation of a transgender woman.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
At the end. Yeah.
So that was an incredibly popular movie. And when you have things like that in the kind of the popular consciousness in culture around you, it tells you that it's not okay for you to be that way.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where if you're having this message of no, you have to, you shouldn't, this if you are this kind of person, then you are going to be humiliated. You're going to be, you're going to lose your friends and your family, and you're going to be turned into a social pariah. You will end up living on the streets, hated by everybody. It's quite extreme. It's
isn't it?
really extreme, and it
places.
really gets ingrained in you. So, for me, the thing that really made me realize that this was something, because I repressed my true nature for the longest time, and one of the things that really hammered that home for me was so I love swimming. It's pretty much one of the only forms of exercise I genuinely enjoy. And when I was a child, very young, I remember I asked my mum if I could wear a women's swimsuit to swim in, because I didn't like having my chest exposed. I didn't like the fact that people could, see vast quantities of my body sort of naked. It just made me feel really uncomfortable. And it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
I was told very firmly, no, that's not what little boys are supposed to wear. And I was told that very firmly, and that I internalized that message. That was
That's
something
happened quite young for you.
Very,
that was about 5 or 6.
Very, very young. I was about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Now, I will just go on the record here, because I'm sure my mum will end up listening to this podcast. I don't blame my parents for this at all. Okay.
Yeah.
You can never know. I don't have children, but I have friends who do, and I know that one of the big anxieties about having children is that you can never be entirely sure how what you say to them in their formative years is going to affect them later in life. So there was no way that my parents could have known that saying that would really seriously unmoor my sense of self.
Well, because they don't know what's going on inside of you either. We
No, of course
never,
not.
ever know what's truly going on. And does the individual really, if we're brutally honest, know what's going on inside of us? And as a parent with adult children, that we don't know what we're doing. And I love my parents to bits. They're two of my very best friends. But there are certain things that they said and did that would have affected me and have affected me. But it's not it's never done out of malice, is it? It's just because we just don't know. We're not given that handbook, and in all intents and purposes, we just do the best with what we know and how we've been brought up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, so and that is a universal thing. That's a human thing. And it's something, you know, as I said, it's not something that I blame my parents for at all.
Of course, yeah.
Because they couldn't have known.
People.
You know, I only realized the truth about myself when I was in my 30s. So, you know, I knew that there was something different. But because of that repression that I felt I had to do, it was something that I was always too afraid to kind of touch in my mind.
Yeah, and because, you know, just on the other end of the scale, we are brought up, aren't we, generally as girls have got to be, you know, they can't be seen to be angry, so they've got to be good and be quiet. And whereas men, it's okay to be angry and you can't show your weaknesses. And
it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to cry. It's not okay to show certain forms of emotion. And that is something I really struggled with, because when I have quite a sensitive nature. And when I was in school, I was bullied for it quite badly. You know, I always struggled to connect with other boys of my age because I wasn't. But you know, I because of the way that because of the physical meat that I inhabited, I felt like I was being pushed into this role that just didn't fit me. And children are really merciless predators when they sense weakness. They pick up on it, and anything that's different about people, they will absolutely mercilessly tear apart. That's my experience.
Well, absolutely. And in bullying, I've experienced it myself and my children too. And gosh, it's all around us, which it shouldn't be. But that must have been a real, I can't find the words, like a struggle, a challenge. I mean, how was it growing up from sort of 5 or 6 when you wanted to go swimming in a female costume to like, and you said you didn't really voice this until your 30s?
Yeah, so
what was that like for you?
It was, how can I even describe it? It was something where I was kind of taught through society and through the way that people treated other people like me that it was something that I shouldn't express. So I didn't. I pushed it to the back of my mind. I assumed for the longest time that, oh, you know, maybe I'm just a bit of a weirdo. Maybe I'm a freak. Like maybe I just like cross-dressing or something. And so that for the longest time, that was kind of what I assumed about myself. And the reality, it was a lot more than that. But at the time, that was how I understood it.
Wow. And to label yourself as a weirdo and a freak, that must be... I do a lot with mindset and emotional health, as you know, and the damaging stories that we tell ourselves over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Like that, it just... My heart at the moment just feels so heavy for you right now. And I know this isn't the case now, but just hearing you share openly as you are. And we all know how tough it is growing up anyway. in schools and through adolescence at the best of times, regardless of whether when you're backwards and forwards and you've got this tug of war and this war going on inside of you that is being poked at by the sounds of it by other people, and particularly being in the minority. Is it fair to say that you're not then surrounded by people that you can confide in or open up to, or
So I mean that's really was the biggest thing, is the fact that I felt like I was totally alone. I felt like there wasn't. I genuinely thought I was a freak, and I eventually when I I grew up and I internalized these feelings, and I realized, okay, this is something that I shouldn't share with people, and okay, fine. Well, what kind of person should I be? And so I looked at how other young men my age behaved, and I tried to incorporate their behaviors into my into I constructed a fabricated version of myself based on what society told me I should be, based on my body. And it wasn't true. It wasn't who I was.
And that's only going to weaken you.
But at the time I felt like I didn't have any other choice.
Wow, I'm sitting here shaking my head, Zoe, because it like I am well aware that this kind of thing goes on, but the reason I'm shaking my head is when you ask yourself, who should I be? And that you construct this way of being to, what's the word I'm looking for? To appease other people, to effectively fit in.
To make other people's lives less complicated.
Exactly. To accommodate other people.
And accommodate other people. The other way that I explain it is it's like constructing a suit of armor around yourself. So, at your core, you have this, and this is the way that I kind of explained it to myself previously, is like at my core, there was this soft, squishy center that was who I truly am. And then all around that, I built this impenetrable suit of armor made up of all of the things that I thought society expected of me. And part of me coming out, scary part of me coming out, was learning to peel that suit of armor off. Because previously, if people criticized me, they weren't really criticizing me because they didn't know who I really was. They were criticizing this fabricated personality I created. Whereas the act of taking that armor off means that people see the real me underneath. And that's scary. It's really scary to do that.
A massive admiration, because it is truly vulnerable. And the word that got me there was impenetrable. Suit of armor, and I've just written down here, that's just not flexible. I mean, you imagine kind of somebody walking around with this metal thing on. It's just not flexible, and it's not healthy either, is it?
It's incredibly tiring.
I can imagine.
Exhausting is the word to use for it.
And confusing.
Because like
conflicting.
In every social interaction, I was having to second guess myself, even down to things like, if I sit down in a chair in a certain way, are people going to look at me weird? Like, men shouldn't cross their legs, or if they do, they should cross it in this certain way. Men walk, from the shoulders rather than from the hips. What kind of mannerisms and manner of speaking should I affect? And these are all things that I was having to deal with day in, day out for 37 years.
Wow, that in itself is exhausting, but I wonder how many of us can relate to it, not necessarily from the transgender perspective, but how many of us build this impenetrable suit of armor around us to protect the truth of who we are, because we don't feel confident or courageous enough to show up as our true selves.
Yeah.
And we build this mask, this suit, these layers around us generally as human beings, don't we? AKA the ego. And that in itself is exhausting. You did your very best, by the sounds of it, to do a good job of being who you weren't. And that included relationships, and you were married for 5 years, with someone for 15 years and married for 5.
Yeah, we were together for 15 years and married for 5 of those. And again, this was part of me affecting a version of myself that I thought was expected of me rather than who I truly was. It was not a healthy relationship. It was an incredibly toxic relationship. It was an extremely abusive relationship emotionally. And but I felt like, this was the life that was expected of me. I felt like my life had been railroaded. I genuinely felt like I had to settle for this unpleasant, toxic, kind of loveless experience. Because it was my only chance of having what to the outside world would appear to be a normal, healthy life.
My gosh.
I was living a total lie. And lo and behold, eventually it all came crashing down. And my my ex was not a very nice person. And it all came out during the divorce. All of the pretense was dropped, and her true nature came out. And but at that point I felt like I'd at least created something. So I was married. I did care about my ex, because when you're in an abusive relationship, you do care about your abuser. Maybe you shouldn't, but that's not how it works. So I did care about that relationship. I had a mortgage. We had a very nice house. I had a cat that I doted on. I'm a big cat lover, and I loved my cat so much. Partly, I think, because my cat was always there for me, and didn't care about who I really was. And we were, from what I understood at the time, financially independent, very stable from that perspective. So I didn't have those kinds of worries. But then it was all ripped away from me. Everything that I cared about most, so my relationship, my house, my cat, was taken away. And it was taken away instantly. That was the absolute darkest moment of my life, because it was very much a case of this life that I felt I'd had was just not even remotely as stable as I thought it was.
Well, when you build your life on something that's not stable, and that's never going to end well, is it? Because if you are trying to create something that is expected of you, that's not based on truth, regardless of who you are, what you do, if it's not based on truth and you live in that pain, you get taken, life carries you further and further and further and further away from your true self until you are at that point of no return.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you hit that place.
Yeah, I did.
Just share a little bit about kind of like how that was for you, and kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, so as far as I'm aware, my ex never knew the truth about me. It's entirely possible that she worked it out, and that may have been a reason for her doing some of the some of the things that she did, but I don't know for sure. When we were going through the divorce process, I was living with my parents. I wasn't able to live in my house. I wasn't able to see the cat. All of my stuff was still at the house that I didn't have access to. And I remember we were going through the mediation process, and I had I was just so distraught with everything, and that I just let her. I just didn't want to engage with this at all.
Mm.
And my ex was a very assertive individual. She knows how to manipulate people to get what she wants from them, and she absolutely used all of those tricks that she knew to undermine me and make me feel like I'd done something horribly wrong and that I needed to be punished for that, and that this having my life torn to pieces was this punishment for it. So during the mediation process, I just basically let her get away with absolutely everything. And there was some financial stuff going on there, which was all of that's another story entirely. But
Yeah.
Ultimately, I finished this mediation session. I just allowed her to walk all over me, and I got up from the desk where I was, and I just walked, and I walked and I walked. I walked for hours, and I ended up in a park near where my parents live, sitting on a bench, and I was I was Googling. Sorry.
It's okay.
I was Googling how high a building needs to be before in order for me to guarantee my death were I to throw myself off of it, and if any of the buildings in my hometown were tall enough to do
You're
that.
tall enough. Wow.
Um,
That in itself is a wake-up call when you when you are aware. I've been in that place too, not with a building, but with my own wake-up call. And when you are awake and aware of doing something like that, it's a massive wake-up call.
yeah, I mean, I even wrote a note saying goodbye to my family, to my friends. I ended up calling the Samaritans in the end, and bless them, they tried, but they didn't really know what to do with me.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately,
I suppose their role is to be there and listen.
their role
isn't
is
it?
to be there and to listen, and they did that. But there wasn't much they could really do. And
in that place, you said you had a stark choice
yeah,
to make.
yeah, I had there's one of my favorite movies is The Shawshank Redemption, and towards the end of that movie, there's a scene where the main character, Andy Dufresne, is making an important choice. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. You should watch it if you're not. But he says this phrase, which is "get busy living or get busy dying."
Wow.
And that came to me in that moment. That really was the choice facing me. I was at my absolute nadir. I couldn't possibly feel any worse. And it was, I had the choice before me is that I can either get busy dying, or I can make the changes to my life that I need to make in order to feel happy with myself.
Wow. My gosh. I mean, isn't it just such a blessing? This is why I love the universe, whatever you want to call it, that in your darkest moment, you remember your favourite film and a quote from that film. That is a gift, right? Some would argue that's a miracle that stopped you from, but you also made that choice. You could have remembered that film and still found a tall building,
Yeah,
but you didn't.
I could have. Um,
So you
but I
wanted
didn't.
you, yeah.
And I'm
Thank
glad I
goodness.
didn't. I'm glad I
I'm
didn't.
glad you didn't.
You know,
But isn't that interesting? If we just take a snapshot of what you just said,
yeah.
right? So back then, in your deepest, darkest place, and you said you couldn't have felt any worse, right? And suicide the statistics for suicide is far too high. The statistics for suicidal thoughts and people really struggling is ridiculously high. And in that moment, you couldn't see a way out. And now you've literally today just said, I'm glad I didn't go there, because you're now loving your life, which we'll move on to in a second. But how extreme are those polar opposites?
Oh gosh, they are. It's like they're in totally different galaxies.
Yeah.
Um,
And isn't that wonderful, though,
yeah.
to think that you were in a dark, dark place without any way, feeling like there was no way out, and yet here you are today, really glad that you didn't follow through. I just really think it's worth highlighting that, because there are so many people that are struggling that I speak to a lot in my line of work. And there is always a way out, but you've got to be willing, haven't you, to look for it and make take that action, make the next step.
Yeah.
And that's what happened for you.
I mean, so people, I think, have suicidal ideation because they want the pain to stop.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And they can't see how it can stop in any other way. They feel like they have no other choice. And fortunately, before I gotten to that point, I had made friends with some trans people online who had, speaking to them, I'd kind of realized the truth about myself, that I wasn't a freak, that I wasn't, just into cross-dressing or whatever, that it was a fundamental part of who I am. And it was through talking to them, listening to their stories and realizing the parallels, listening to them talk about how they grew up and they experienced the same things that I did, and realizing, oh my God, that they could literally be describing me right now.
Wow.
And I had that support network there, of people who allowed me to realize that truth about who I really am.
But by them sharing their stories, you could see and hear yourself in them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
And that's the beauty of being able to share, and the vulnerability in being able to share regardless of the response or reaction you get from the outside world or other people.
Yeah.
Amazing. And your friends have been hugely supportive and amazing.
I've been incredibly lucky. I mean, obviously my trans friends have been supportive, but pat on the back for past Zoe for picking her own friends, the people that I made friends with myself outside of my marriage and all of that stuff. Everyone has stuck by me. My family have embraced me. My friends have realized, I think a lot of them, I remember when I told my best friend I came out to him, it was actually after I had that experience in the park that that was kind of the moment when I realized that I had to do something about this.
Amazing.
And it was, I remember I came out to my best friend and he kind of said, yeah, I kind of knew,
Oh, really?
Yeah,
See?
he's dating a trans woman himself, and I think he realized
Wonderful.
he knew I
Yeah.
was trans before I did. And
Oh, there we
it
go.
was funny because it was sort of like, oh, could you not have told me? Like it would have been. I mean, obviously,
Well,
I'm,
the
I'm
best friend will let you work it out for yourself,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, this is the sort of thing you have to work out for yourself. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it was just
In
funny to
jest.
me that he wasn't surprised at all, and he
Yeah.
kind of knew. And other people as well, through my work, and um, other friendships that I had, you know, people have been like, yeah, it kind of makes sense.
Well,
They
people who knew you would say that. Well, I've only known you as Zoe.
yeah,
When
yeah,
we very first met in the networking space, as we've come together as business people, I mean, why wouldn't people? I mean, this is where I'm coming from, right? And I can only speak for myself. Why wouldn't I be supportive of who you are, regardless of what I know or don't know?
mhm,
Because the phrase that comes to mind is, who am I to judge?
yeah,
Who am I to judge? If Vanessa Louise wakes up every morning, as I do, and I just want to love people because hurt people,
mm,
right? And your past relationship is evidence that hurt people, right?
mm.
I don't know about you. I think the answer is yes. But I think you're like me, that I don't want to live in that world anymore. This is why I do what I do. I want to live and I want to help create a world. I want to be a part of an emerging world where loving people love people.
Mm.
Otherwise, we're going to get all sorts of people Googling how high does a building need to be, rather than who am I and how can I love and how can I show up. So who am I to judge? Who is anyone to judge?
Well, this is it.
Because if
You've
we're
got to
honest with
be
ourselves.
you've got to be the change that you want to see in the world. Um,
Oh, so beautifully said. So beautifully said. I just think
it's what I
you
truly
are.
believe. It's there's no point in um, there's no point in lamenting how other people around you are awful and then being awful yourself. You've got to embody the
Brilliant.
things that you want to
Yeah.
see in other people. Or
Well,
at
and
least
I
that's the
just
way that I try to live in any case.
Oh, absolutely. And we've spoken a few times and at length as we've been speaking on the pod and preparing for this pod. But when you say that people have been amazing, I think I know why it is because you are demonstrating how powerful vulnerability is, right? And whether we relate to the transgender part of your story or not, I know for a fact I relate to the part where you talked about an impenetrable suit of armour, right? I think we all know that there is a part of us that wears a mask, right? Because it's part of the human experience. But you decided when you woke up contemplating whether to take your own life or not, that your stark choice was to get busy living, and you then took the steps you needed to actually live as Zoe wants to live.
Yeah,
Because you'd spent 35, 37 years not doing that. It's just too long.
yeah, yeah.
It's too long.
It was too long. It would have killed me had I not taken those steps. Eventually,
Yeah,
I
and
wouldn't have. That was very much what it was. It was.
do or die.
I either do this now, and I throw myself into it, and I live in harmony with who I am, or I don't live to see my 40s. That really was. It really was that stark of a choice.
And if we're brutally honest, if the people that love you, the people that love us, don't they just want us? I know I've said this about my kids and the people I love. I just want them to be happy. Choose what you want to do, and let me know how I can help and support. But I just want you to be happy.
I think the vast majority of people are like that, but sadly, there is still a lot of bigotry out there, specifically aimed at trans people. And it's like the more accepting wider society has become of us, the stronger the backlash from those bigoted elements of society has become.
And I think there's an element of acceptance on both sides, because I'm totally with you, right? But equally, I can also appreciate where other people are coming from, because it's that accepting it's the thing we don't understand.
Yeah.
So I'm born a woman, I live as a woman, I love being a woman, right? But if there are other people, guys or girls, men or women, that don't understand where you're coming from, they're never going to get it. So they've either got to make the choice to understand you, or keep your opinions to yourself. It's easy to say, everyone's allowed an opinion. But, equally, we have to also let them have their opinions.
Yeah.
So we would, like they be the change. It's about being accepting. But it must be a real sharp lesson in letting go of what people think. There's that wonderful phrase, isn't there, by Wayne Dyer, what you think of me is none of my business. It's what I think of me is what I care about. And
that's a very good point. And that was one of the, as I said earlier, that one of the scary things about coming out was learning to peel off that armor, because then if people criticized me, then they're not criticizing the fabricated reality not the fabricated reality, but the fabricated persona that I had created. They were criticizing the reality, the real me underneath, and that's a very scary prospect to somebody who's been living inside hidden away. But actually, the slightly weird thing is that sort of the opposite happened, which is that as I peeled off this armor and I started to love myself, I started to gain the ability to look at myself in the mirror and smile at the woman looking back, because I felt genuinely happy with myself, and I felt like I'd made the changes that I wanted to make, and it meant that suddenly I don't really care about what other people think of me, because I love me. And,
I love that.
And that's the most important thing, right?
Absolutely. And I've got a theory, right? And you said, and I've just run out of paper, I need to turn my page over. You said, weirdly, and I'm smiling going, oh, no, it's not weird. It's not weird. You know why it's not weird? Because the truth of who you are as an individual, and you explained it as soft and squishy, which I get the concept, but that soft, squishy place is so powerful. Because my theory is there is one power orchestrating everything. It's turning the world, growing the grass, and beating our hearts. And if that power that's orchestrating everything opens the blossoms, and it is doing everything, loves you enough and values you enough to beat your heart and sustain your existence, when you tap into that, which is what you did, I don't think that's weird. I think that's truth. I think that is the beauty and the power of us as human beings. When we tap into that deep, loving, unconditional, unlimited power, potential inside of us, I believe we activate a dormant force that then carries us. And that is why I think your friends have been amazing. I think that's why when you meet people, when I say like myself, because I can only speak for myself, that don't bloody give a shit who you are as a gender, right? I just want to show up in this world with real people. I want people to say and think and behave as demonstrations of love, right? That's what you've tapped into. So I don't think it's weird at all. I think it's beautiful, and I think it's got you.
Yeah, I suppose I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's your pussycat that we've spoken about before. And forgive me, I can't remember his name.
Cleo. Her name was Cleo.
Cleo. Her name, yeah. So your cat loves you unconditionally, right? That's why you have such a beautiful connection with your pet. Because it doesn't care. It just cares that you are a vibration of love, doing your very best in this world to show up as you want to show up.
Yeah.
whatever your physicality is. I,
And as a result of me being truthful with myself, I've managed to rebuild my life into something that I'm truly happy with. Yes,
wow.
I lost Cleo, but I eventually got, when I felt emotionally
Yeah.
stable enough, I got another cat. So, I now have
Yeah.
Jet, who is
Yeah.
a wonderful, loving goblin. And again, like
He's a cool cat.
he doesn't care who I am. Like
No.
all he cares is that I play with him, I pet him, I
Yeah.
provide him with the love and care, that all the love and care that I can. And
Yeah.
that's special to me.
And he loves you right back for it.
Yeah.
Um, so you've gone through. We'll just gone through the process because I was intrigued as to know what that looked like, and you were you got yourself onto HRT.
Yes. So I've been on HRT now for a little over 2 years. I started my transition socially, so that is, changing my name, my pronouns, my wardrobe, I suppose,
Yeah.
and how I presented myself about a year before that. Um, and there are roughly three ways to go about it in the UK. So the first way is you go to your doctor, and you say, "Help! I think I'm trans." And then if your doctor is, and this is a big if your doctor is uh, um, sympathetic, then they will forward you on to an NHS gender identity clinic, and you will then go on a waiting list. At the moment, the waiting list is, I think, something like 17 years. Um,
Okay.
so, for understandable reasons, that I didn't feel like that was an option.
Okay.
Option two is to uh, kind of do it yourself.
Yeah.
And for some people, that is a valid course to take. You have to, but you have to pay to have blood tests done, and then you work out what your dosages need to be in order to change your hormonal balance. And it is possible to do on your own, but if you
Not
get it
advised.
wrong, you
Yeah.
can do some serious damage. And the way that I always described it is, if I'm going to biohack my endocrine system, I want an endocrinologist to tell me how to do it.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So option number three is to do it privately.
Okay.
So in order to do that, you obviously have to pay upfront
Yeah.
for a lot of this, and it's expensive. I was
Yeah.
lucky in that I had just about enough savings left over after my divorce to start this process off.
Wonderful.
So I had to go
Wonderful.
and talk to a psychologist who asked me some very probing questions about who I am, about my past, about my sexuality, about my fetishes, my masturbation habits, all
Wow.
things that literally. And they apologized as they were doing this because they realized that this was
I want to dig deep.
possibly not
Yeah.
not a comfortable thing to talk to a stranger about, but it's a box ticking exercise essentially.
And
And
equally,
it's
not being funny though, if you've worked out who you truly are and you want to show up as that, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Well, it didn't matter to me.
No, good for
And,
you.
I felt like, again, it was that get busy living or get busy dying
Yeah,
thing. It was like, well, this is the uncomfortable bit that I have to go through. So I'm going to
yeah,
endure it. Um,
yeah.
so at the end of that, I got a piece of paper which says, yes, Zoe suffers from gender dysphoria. Please provide her with medication to deal with
Wonderful.
this. So I then took that to a private endocrinologist who coordinates with my GP to provide me with the medication that I need in order to
Wonderful.
in order to medically transition my body.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And when we first met, you were wearing wigs, and you've now had some amazing surgery done, and you've got real hair.
Yes.
Hair transplant. I mean, it's just wonderful.
Yeah. So I mean,
So you're able to style your own hair.
yeah. So I mean, I transitioned quite late. 37 is quite late. Most trans people transition in their late teens, early 20s. But by the time I came around to do it, testosterone had already ruined my body, including my hairline, which had receded. So I felt like I had to wear wigs in order to feel comfortable. But again, I had just enough money from the divorce and everything to spend to correct that. And I now feel much more confident in myself.
It's great because you're able to style your hair, and I see the things you do on social, and every time I see it, I think, oh, you go, Zoe. Absolutely. So inspiring and encouraging. And voice training. You've had voice training as well.
Well, yes and no. So one of the things, so HRT will help with some things. So it will help with things like fat distribution, muscle mass. You get physically weaker, and you put on weight easier
in different areas.
Yeah.
Easier in different areas, really?
Yeah. Wow. So So my fat distribution pattern has completely changed.
Wow.
So
you really do feel different.
I feel totally different. But one of the things which it doesn't change, there are two key things which it doesn't change. The first thing is your skeletal structure. I will always have relatively slim hips and relatively wide shoulders. And for trans feminine people, it doesn't change your voice. So
so it's working at that.
So and the only way to change that, there's surgery that you can do, but it's debatable whether that's actually worthwhile me doing that at this point. But voice training really is the only way that I can get around that. Well,
we're quite similar in one respect then, because you said slimmer hips and wider shoulders. My stylist tells me I'm an inverted triangle, and I've got the same as you, so I'm wider on my. There we go.
Yeah.
I think it's such a beautiful story. And the reason I think it's beautiful is because my wish is that everybody taps into who they truly are and shows up and lives a life. And I love that. I'm going to use that a lot more. Get busy living. And you are a lot more in touch with who you are as a person now. Your relationships must be just rock solid, and you have fun with your tribe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so... I can't even begin to describe. It feels like a massive... like before I did all of this, it felt like I was having to drag, like in the old cartoons, dragging a massive weight behind you, literally chained to my ankle. That's what it felt like. And now it feels like I've taken that off and I'm able to fully experience life. And the fact that people have accepted me and love me for who I truly am is really touching. I really feel like I've been truly happy for the first time.
That's just amazing. And we meet every couple of weeks, and it's always such a joy to see you and to see how you are showing up in a business sense, but also when I see you personally, because that must have been tough as well, coming out and Zoe at work.
Oh gosh.
Because your business, your family business is videos.
Yeah, so we're a video production company. We make videos for businesses, and it's a family business. It's been around for a long time, and I do a lot of networking. So I act as a producer director, so I talk one-on-one with our clients, and I go out to networking groups, and I generate business through those networking groups. So one of the scariest things I had to do when I came out was my first networking group as Zoe,
Right.
And I got myself dressed up in the morning, and I wore a full face of makeup, and I had my wig at the time, and I went and did my 60 seconds at this networking group, and I remember saying, rather than stick to the theme of the 60 seconds, I'm going to address the Zoe-shaped elephant in the room.
Oh, good for you.
And I basically explained everything there and then.
Yeah,
And
amazing.
I got a round of applause, and
Not surprised.
people were like, "Oh my God, you're so brave! You're so brave!" And
It's inspiring, Zoe. It really is. It really is. And again, I'm going to come back to this suit of armour, the
yeah,
impenetrable suit of armour. When we live our lives wearing that suit of armour, we're getting busy dying, basically.
yeah,
And that's where you found yourself.
yeah.
You brought
Because
yourself
that
back to life.
I mean, to use that, excuse me, to use that analogy of the suit of armor, it's all encompassing, and it slowly suffocates you.
It's limiting.
It
We
li- it
disintegrate.
limits you. It means that you, and suffocating is the way that I would describe it.
Wow.
Because you're being crushed on all sides by this fabricated personality, this thing that you've created that you think other people expect you to be. And then to take all of that off, you're suddenly able to breathe and be true to yourself.
Amazing.
And it's a wonderful experience. Honestly, the
freedom.
freedom. Yeah, I feel free.
Wow. So
Yeah.
to go back to the top of the pod, I have worth as a human being, and I deserve to be happy.
Yeah.
So I see sat in front of me the beautiful Zoe, who is so worthy and deserving of getting busy living.
Yeah.
Bless you. Have you got any final thoughts as we wrap up that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so there's kind of a I was having a little think about this, and there is there's a TV show called BoJack Horseman. It's it's an animated show, and there was an episode where BoJack, he's a horse and also a person, who he works in Hollywood, and he's kind of a bit of a has-been retired actor, and he's trying to find his old producer. I think he's a gerbil called Mr. Cuddly Whiskers. And Mr. Cuddly Whiskers has disappeared, and nobody knows where he is. And eventually, BoJack manages to track him down. He's there with his friend Diane, and they have this conversation about the nature of happiness. And there's this quote that really stuck with me, which is they ask him where he's been and why he's disappeared, and he's living in a yurt in the forest somewhere and drinking homemade tea, and he feels genuinely at peace with who he is. And he says, sometimes you need to take responsibility for your own happiness. And his BoJack's friend Diane says, "You don't think that's a little selfish?" To which Mr. Cuddly Whiskers replies, "I don't know what to tell you. I'm happy, and I'm not going to feel bad about it. It takes a long time to realize how truly miserable you are, and even longer to see that it doesn't have to be that way. Only after you give up everything can you truly find a way to be happy." And that really stuck with me.
I'm not surprised. That's got me tingling all over.
BoJack Horseman's a really good show.
Wow, but I don't really watch telly, but I might have to look that one up.
Yeah.
Zoe, thank you for finishing on such a profound piece of wisdom, because we spend so long not living in that place.
Yeah.
And like you say, even longer not understanding that it doesn't have to be that way. And that those words, "it doesn't have to be this way," are what really got me going a few years ago. And that's why I love the work that I do. I want to thank you for coming into my life in our networking space. I want to thank you for your courage, your bravery, your honesty. And I also want to thank you for doing the work. I want to thank you for finding who you truly were, or should I say discovering and revealing, because she was always in there.
Yeah, always there, just hidden.
Just was hidden away. And I'll finish by just saying thank you. But could you imagine our world if there were more brave, courageous and vulnerable people like you that were willing to let go of that penetrable suit of armour? We would be living in a very different world, and that's my passion. So thank you for sharing your story today. I very much appreciate you, and love you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, lovely. Catch you soon. The invitation is to take a few moments to reflect on what's resonated with you here today. Let us know what you find. Share this episode with those you love to practice your vulnerability and enable deeper connection with self, others, and the world around you. May you feel blessed and loved as you live your days with purpose and presence. Thank you for being here, and thank you for choosing you. I love you.